get passionate.
Right.
So there's an awful lot of people who think passion and happiness happen to you.
Yep.
They don't happen to you. You decide them. Because passion for something gets you up in the morning. It keeps you up at night when that's what's needed.
Yes.
It gives you the reason to get out of bed in the morning because, the thing you're going to is something you really want to go to, right? And it might be hard. I'm not saying it's always easy, but it's still something you're passionate about solving or getting over, etc.
So good morning and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. Today I'm pretty excited because I've got Naomi Ballantyne here, who is not only the founder of Partners Life, but also my husband's boss. So it's quite exciting to have her in the room with me. Welcome to the show, Naomi.
Thanks, Debra.
Hey.
Delighted to be here.
Lovely to have you here. Hey, we were just having a quick chat before we started the cameras rolling, and you were telling me a little bit about your history in the whole insurance industry. I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing that and also sharing a little bit about what you're most proud of, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, I fell into the industry by accident. I needed a job. I was at university doing marine biology, as you do when you go into finance, and but I needed to work. And I come from a poor background. I didn't have any idea of anything to do with money because we didn't have any, and we sure as heck didn't talk about it. So I saw a job advertised. It said management trainee life insurance, and I thought, management trainee sounds like me. I have no idea what life insurance is, but I'm sure I'll learn.
Give it a go.
I'll give it a go, yeah. And fell into it in that way. And very quickly found out it was an awful structure of an industry, very old school, old fashioned, sort of are you being served, old Mr. Young, Mr. Grace kind of idea with you can go up one step, one grade each year if you're good and male. And the girls will one day get married and have kids. Customer really didn't even come into the conversation. But we're in an industry that paid out money in the end when people died to the surviving family. So the purpose of the industry intrigued me, but the structure of the industry was just awful. But it's how I got my start. And I guess what's kept me there is the feedback from the customers. When they bought a product they didn't want, didn't think they needed, didn't want to pay for, thought it was way too expensive, and then you pay out money at the worst possible time in their lives. That changes their life. It just removes that stress, which is enormous.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're so desperately grateful. That keeps you coming back for more.
I love it. And so this isn't your first time, though, is it? I mean, Partners Life is the second bite of the cake, if you like.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the first company that you started.
Yeah, I started a company called Club Life. I had been the founding employee of Sovereign back in the start of Sovereign. So I had effectively built all of the sort of operational structures for Sovereign over the 13 years that I was there. So I knew I had the experience, and probably one of the only people who had the experience to actually build a life insurance company from scratch. But I had never raised funds for it, found reinsurance for it, done the financial side of it. But having left Sovereign when ASB had bought it, I figured they would change it. And so there'd be an opportunity with the distribution force and customer base for another Sovereign, a modern, forward-looking, innovative company. So I thought, well, if anyone can, I can, and I'm sure I can learn that bit. So, and so, I started Club Life, which I later sold to ING, ran it as ING Life for a large number of years, before I left, just as ANZ Bank bought it. You can see there's a trend.
The bank's always in that buying and they're not, I don't know. Yeah. My personal opinion is I'm not sure they're great places to work.
I just don't think they understand the long-term permanence and the impact of life insurance.
Sure.
It's not transactional banking.
Yeah.
And if you apply transactional banking management technique to it, you break it.
And that's what I mean. It's not that banks aren't good at what they do, but I don't think insurance is their core competency.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So personal and professional best, what are you most proud of in your life so far?
Personally, what I'm most proud of is the magnificent person that my son has grown into.
Yes.
And I'll give a little bit of background. I mean, everybody wants to say that about their kids, but when I had Chris, I went straight back to work when he was 6 months old, and everybody told me that was a terrible thing to do, other than my mother, who, by the way, had been a stay-at-home mum. I wasn't expecting that, but she was, and she helped me by looking after him, and I paid her to do that. But so she facilitated that to happen. But everybody had an opinion about what a terrible mother I was, and how damaged my child was going to be, and how spoilt my child was going to be, and all of those sorts of things. And he is now a 33-year-old, married to the best daughter-in-law just the best person,
Yeah.
and happy and successful and driven, and he loves his mum.
Yeah.
And I go, wow, thanks for all your feedback, but I win.
Yeah.
And so to know that, I've played a part in another person's happiness in that way, is just the joy of my life. And, I keep pinching myself that I get to call those two my kids. So that's I'm sure they don't like me calling them kids, but,
They'll always
they'll
be
always
kids,
be
right?
my kids, yeah. Um, and professionally, it's interesting. I'm so proud of those companies that I've built, but the companies are not what I consider to be a legacy. Actually, the legacy, I think, is the changing of the industry that comes from making competitors compete. And in the earlier days, it was those old state, are you being served, male dominated, who cares about the customer, old boys clubs, that first of all poo-pooed me and then suddenly had to compete with me. And in the needing to compete because the products are better and the service was better and the relationship with the distributors were better and staff wanted to work, and suddenly you have to change, meant that they needed to change the mindset of people that were running those businesses in order to be able to compete. Effectively, the whole industry shifted as a result of that and is so much better now than it ever was. And you just need to look at the comparison between Australia and New Zealand. Australia Royal Commission, Australia was still terrible right up until not many years ago, whereas New Zealand had not been. There was still a lot of stuff that wasn't great, but it certainly wasn't Australia-like. And you'd have to say that's because a much more competitive market and nobody could get away with that. And I was a part of that. And I feel incredibly proud for New Zealand that, maybe I short-circuited that in some way.
You certainly did. I can see that. I know that Steve often comes home and he tells me about the great things that happens at Partners Life, and you've got your Friday morning sessions you with the team, you've got great team building events. But tell me about because you're right, the people can make a huge difference. How do you treat people differently, do you think, than others?
That's a multifaceted thing. But I think in the first instance is who you choose to have around you. But who do you choose to recruit? And the industry and the recruitment industry is notorious for saying, what kind of experience do you need to have? Oh, you need 10 years experience in this particular discipline. So it cuts out anybody that's different. That's come from a different background, that has a different perspective, that is a different sex or ethnicity, or because 10 years ago, that's what everybody looked like. And
white male.
People only recruited people just like themselves.
Yes.
So if you don't consciously break that mold, then you will continue that trend. And monogamy and monogamous of an employee base is the thing that keeps you stuck in one place, right? The thing that moves you forward is different ideas. And so one is being free to say that stuff doesn't matter. What I'm looking for is attitude, aptitude, intellect, and difference. So I don't want two people the same. I want, that person to be different from the next person you recruit and so on. Part of it is conscious, part of it is unconscious. I don't have a degree. I'm not a white male. I'm actually Pacifica and more Pacifica even in my thinking than I am in my actual genetic, and certainly the way I look, right? So, that kind of difference, I think, you attract it because you're not rejecting it, and as a result of that, you get a much more challenging but also innovative environment. So that's one thing. I think then it is understanding your role. So I surround myself with people who are all better than me. My executive team, the team underneath them, they're all super, super, super good at what they do. I know what they do. I know what I expect them to do, and I can ask questions. I know enough about every part of my business, and that's what you have to do when you're a founder. To know how to challenge them. But I also know that they are better than me. My job is to lead them. And to get them to want to follow me to a place they wouldn't have gone by themselves. To give them the confidence that we collectively can do that, and that all the people around them collectively will make the best decision, not one person because you're the expert at that. You are the expert at that, so no one can sort of challenge you on that. You're safe in that knowledge, so why not let everybody else have a point of view as well on your thing? Because ultimately something might spark you to go, it's not quite right, but that's a good idea. Let me go away and think about that. So as an executive team, I've always run it that we talk about everything, every topic, every problem, every opportunity in every area of the company collectively. And then we make a collective decision. And if we can't decide, I decide. That's your role, right? And then that's our decision. And then we collectively support that. That's how it's always been. Does a couple of things, gives you the best answers, you get the best ideas, you get that. It gives everyone buy-in, so you all know why you're doing things, you know what's happening, you know you've had an input, so there's nobody going out going, I didn't agree with that, that's all terrible, and you get that politics in an organisation. And it teaches everybody stuff. Everybody around that table, every time we have a discussion about a topic, learns more about something they are not experts at, to become more experts so they can do my job, right? So if I fall over by a bus, everybody knows exactly what I know. And I think that has worked really well for us. And it's not what everyone does, but it's certainly what I do.
It sounds like we do at EOS. We basically have a leadership team that is involved in every decision. And like you said, there's one person who ultimately holds the casting vote if required. But in general, you're actually asking for diversity of the leadership team to come up with the best possible solution. And in fact, we encourage them to, first of all, make sure they've really identified the real issue and then discuss all the possible solutions. And it's surprising. Sometimes the answers come from somebody who you least expect it to. For example, one of the companies I was working with, they had a cash flow issue. And it was a company that produced food. And it was actually the chef that came up with the answer in terms of saving money. Now, if that discussion had only been had at the financial table, we may not have got there. Yeah.
100% agree with that. How did that chef feel after that?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, because he's actually contributing. As you said, he's got the buy-in. He's contributed to actually making the decision. He understands why it has to be made. Because I think sometimes, particularly, I mean, I worked for Tower for a long time, those kind of hierarchical organisations, when an order comes down from above, you just do it because you're told to without truly understanding it, which means you're not really bought into it. And so at every opportunity, you might find a way to bend the rules where actually if you're involved in the decision from the beginning, you can go, okay, I understand why that has to be done. I'm happy to take that on board.
Yeah, and I think the other half of it too is out of the executive team needs to come communication to the wider organisation about what we discussed and why we discussed it and what we've decided. And also to give staff who've contributed to that executive's opinion, the comfort that their opinion has counted and it's been heard and it's been fed through, right? So the communication is an enormously important part of the organisation's buy-in. Like you said, just do this because is the first step to everybody going, work to rule, that kind of, and I hate this company and they don't listen to me. And we hear that all over the place. And largely it's not necessarily true, but it feels that way because there isn't this communication channel. So you talked about Friday feedback.
Yes,
it's exactly like this is what we decided this week. This is what we've been struggling with this week. This is why we do it. What happens when you build up that kind of trust where people go, I get why we're doing this, is when they don't get why you're doing something, like COVID hits, for example, or economic stress hits and you have to make structural decisions about the company. You have to start cutting back on staff, for example, and you obviously can't go into details about stuff like that. With every staff member, they trust you. And they go, okay, I don't understand why we're doing this, but I trust that you do. And when you can, you'll tell me about it. And that has delivered some
good stuff.
Really good outcomes to us.
So I'm really interested because obviously, Partners Life, how many staff have you got now?
Well, we've now got just under 400.
Wow, gosh, it's grown so quickly, hasn't it? So that's been in 12 years. So when you first started, it would have been you and three of you, and now you've got just under 400 people. So obviously communication becomes more and more difficult the bigger the complexity of the organisation. What have you done to try and sort of simplify that down and ensure that people do get to be involved?
It's a really good question. So we've always intended to communicate, and the hardest part is how you do it. So you use all staff emails and you do monthly town hall meetings where you get everyone staff together. That's what we used to do,
right?
And it was okay, but it's not instant, it's not fast enough, it's not. And then COVID hit and everybody had to go work from home, and we decided that the best way to keep managing people feeling like they still belong to a team is let them see each other on the screen, everybody, and talk to them once a week online. Hey, guess what? That's a fantastic medium for communicating with people. So we keep doing it. And we still do it. Even if 90% of the people are in the office, Friday feedback is online. And so you build all your techniques about the games that you play and the chat, the way people use chat and all of that sort of thing, as if everyone was at home and online, and that was the only way they were consuming that. And it has worked exceptionally well. Thank God for COVID, for that, and for the workplace flexibility, because COVID forced us to go, everybody can work from home. So if they want to, why not? And our world changed completely as a result of that, and has remained so. And it's been magnificent.
It's actually really interesting. I know of another insurance company that during the lockdowns actually wouldn't allow video conferencing because I think maybe their service couldn't cover. I don't know what the reason was, but they tried to do everything online without any visual, any video, which is actually really, really tough, because I don't know about you, I love the fact that I can see somebody, engage with somebody. Listening to somebody without seeing them I would switch off completely.
Yeah. And part of the charm of our Friday feedback sessions is they're not formal. They're not me in a suit, reading a script that someone else wrote for me, as if the staff were an audience from the outside. We're a team, right? So I'm a bit of a goofball, and and if it's Friday, we have casual Fridays, and I don't have any meetings. I try to wear something that will amuse people. Did videos from calls from home when we were in lockdown, and people could see all the ornaments I had on my shelf because I didn't put a background on it, because they're at home, I'm at home, I want them to see I'm in the same boat. And so they'd all make funny comments about them as I try to move them around to see if anyone noticed. And so you have to be you, is what I'm saying. And mostly for me, that is visual, because you can see I'm very expressive with my face. I smile a lot, and I want them to know I'm smiling. And I want to see them, and they want to see each other. I don't imagine that we would have got anywhere near as close to the outcome that we've had if people couldn't see.
I completely agree. So what's been the biggest challenge for you? Because, I mean, I know that you've had some great success, and well done on that, but there must have been some times when things were really tough and you're wondering why you did it the second time round.
The biggest challenges, there's not a biggest challenge. When challenges come, they're always big. When you're running a financial services business, it's regulated. The job that we do in people's lives is enormously important. You're dealing with huge amounts of money, and you've got huge numbers of staff, who've come on a startup journey with you. So, they've risked a lot to come along with you. Then every hurdle that you hit is a potential risk to, are we even going to survive this, right? And so when you have those moments, that's when you feel most alone, because in the end, in a crisis, that's when a leader leads, right? That's when people need someone to trust, and so you can't burden them with how scared you are. You need to give them confidence. We've got this,
It's all under control.
So all of your panic is your own, and you have to be able to deal with that. And so the way I deal with those moments, and there's lots of them, and there'll be less of them now that we have all of the financial support of a global Japanese insurer. Totally. So that capital raising and all of that, that's not an issue anymore. You still got the same challenge of regulators and conduct and do the right thing by customers and all of those challenges, but at least the money part for a startup business is such a big part of that. But for me, I need to have a circuit break to stop my brain from thinking. So a couple of things. I run. I hate long distance running because I'm not good. I'm cut out to be a sprinter. But I love the solitude, and I go into the bush. I take my two little dogs in the bush. You're worried about falling over the tree roots and the mud and slipping, and so the breathing is not as much of an issue. It's beautiful, so you're dead silent. And have you ever seen dogs run in the bush off leash? Oh my God, the tails, like the absolute joy.
What dogs do you have?
I've got a miniature pincer and an Affin pincer Shih Tzu cross.
Oh, beautiful.
So they're both little, and they are my babies.
So we've got our two. So Steve and I go into the forest on our bikes, and they kind of chase along behind us, and they just love it. And I think that's our rest time as well.
Little dogs need to stop start. They can't run continuously. I need to stop start. But the joy of it, it just completely clears your brain. And you don't know you're not thinking, you just don't realise it. But often I'd come out of the bush and a spark of an idea would have been there because of the stress. But even if it hadn't, at least I'd had that respite for long enough that you can fill your tank and get going again. So that's one way in which I do it. The other way is just by sort of breathing and visualising a point in time past the problem when you're through it and you're looking back and laughing about how worried you were, right? So almost like relieving the pressure long enough to look back and almost by doing that you've seen the pathway that you took to get past it as well. And usually I come out with at least the next tiny step, and momentum gets you there. Taking a step leads to the next step and the next step, but being frozen in that place and not moving is the worst possible thing that can happen to you. So you have to find a way to relieve the panic because you're going to feel it because you've got so much at stake. But the more you get through, the more you
build.
100%, and the more confidence you've got. Like I haven't encountered this before, but I'm sure I can figure it out. You're not alone. You've still got all the experience of everybody else that's fed into you behind you. But in that moment, there pretty much is only you. With the scale and the size of the of the problem.
Do you have any sort of peer groups or things that you're a part of? I mean, how do you get your support? I mean, obviously your leadership team is there to support you, but beyond that, what else do you have?
Well, I have, my husband, interestingly, not from an industry point of view. He's been in the industry, but not in any similar kind of roles. But from I can scream and rant and rave and tell him about all the terrible people I've had to deal with, in various organisations or whatever. He doesn't know any of them, but he's like cheerleader number one.
Oh, nice.
And not in a silliest way, but just I know you. You've got this. It's okay. You're going to be fine. You've done this before. That kind of stuff. Always 100% on your side. And that's been an enormously important role for me for 40 years, right? I'm so lucky to have a husband that's not trying to compete with me on the job front, that he can be there for me. Not seeing each weakness as I'm better at what I do, but as we're in this together because what you do is effectively what we do. So there's that, and there's my son who does know the industry, incredibly smart and thinks differently from me, less emotional, much more analytic. He will go and research a million things before he forms an opinion on it. That kind of stuff. He is. But then he'll form an opinion, and then so just another perspective on things is another way of doing it. And he's been capable of doing that since he was a young teenager. So I kind of feel like I've had two adults in my life where I can bounce or vent, but who aren't telling me what to do. And I haven't.
That's really good.
Yeah, I haven't really felt that I've needed any more than that.
Okay, well, that makes perfect sense. So going back, so one of the things you talked about was obviously going off into the forest, and we call those clarity breaks. And I think leaders often don't understand that when you're so busy fighting the fires, you've got all that stress going on, you either aren't capable of making decisions or you make the wrong decisions because you're making it under a huge amount of pressure. So for you, it's going off into the forest. For other people, it could just be just getting away from technology, just doing something that actually gets you out of the everyday environment and just allowing yourself to breathe and to have that clarity of thought.
Yeah, for me, the busyness of running, I guess, stops me from thinking. Because what I need to do is stop thinking. Not go to another place where I've got plenty of time to think more.
Right.
Stop like thinking. A massage is not helping me because all I do is lie there. You get to the end of it, go, oh, I don't know what just happened. Was that good? I don't know.
I missed it all. I think you're right. And I must admit, I'm an active relaxer too, so I think the cycling is the same for us because when you're cycling, even though a lot of it is kind of intuitive as it's running, you're still always looking out, you're still looking around, you're not able to do an awful lot of thinking while you're doing it, so it gives that clarity of thought. Okay, interesting. In terms of your leadership team, how often do you meet with them and how do you get their input into the business decisions and things that you've talked about?
We sit together. So when we're physically, because again, some of them are working from home, but when we're physically in together, we have a community. We're all open plan, have always been open plan. No one's ever had an office.
Right.
So we sit within the vicinity. There's a couple of reasons for that. It means you can shout something at someone about something confidential and not worry that the whole office has heard it, right? So you can, have these conversations. But it's amazing how often you get up and just go chat to someone who's sitting next to you, right? Or three doors down about a small thing, which ultimately might lead to input into a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of neighbourhood has worked really well. Yeah, we meet once a week, and that's both online and in person. Whoever's in person gets together in a room, and we're all on our laptops, so everybody can see everybody's faces, and not a room with a whole bunch of people and then 3 people on a big screen. That's awful, and it's not right. So, so we meet once a week quickly, and then every fortnight long, and then every couple of months we do a whole exec offsite to really drill down into all of the individual issues. We also do strategy planning each year, and we do an actual offsite rotating away for a couple of days, and then bring their families in for a couple of days after that to just give that team chance to get to know people outside of just the things that we're dealing with as well. So, it's a very strong team.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And you just, as you said, you just recently had some investment from what was the company's name? Daiichi Life, yeah. And that's a big Japanese company, isn't it? It's a global organisation. How did that come about, and what was the driving force for that for you?
That's a really interesting one. When I started the company, there's 2 ways that a company exits or gets enough cash over time to become a forever company. One is IPO, so listing on the stock exchange, and the other is a trade sale. And in my head, the best trade sale owner for Partners Life, right since the day that we started, would be Daiichi Life. And the reason for that is Daiichi Life had bought TAL in Australia, TAL Australia Life.
Okay.
Not long after Partners Life started. And TAL's trajectory since then had been phenomenal. They were number 10 in the Australian market. They're now number 1 in 10 years, right? So 11 years now. And that was with Daiichi Life behind them. I know Brett Clark, who's the managing director of TAL, reasonably well. I've met him a couple of times as Partners Life to just explore some of the neat things they were doing in Australia and talk about some of the stuff that we were doing. And all of my experiences were they were running TAL exactly the way they wanted to run TAL, with full support of Daiichi Life.
That's interesting.
So to me, that was the dream track record. And I've watched other companies be bought by other global organisations who basically destroyed.
But made them do things the way they did it, as opposed to keeping the culture.
That's right. Ran systems out of Australia because there were synergies in that, and New Zealand never got a look at, right? And that was the worst outcome that I could see. And along the way, we'd raised capital. We had private equity shareholders, and ultimately they were going to need an exit strategy. So at some point you're going to trade, sale, or IPO. You have to, because that's their exit strategy. And we're probably right at that time frame now. But markets are terrible for IPOs at the moment. And so, our shareholders are going, okay, we're probably going to have to hold on a bit longer. That's okay. And you're going, okay, it's not really what I want from my shareholders, because, I might need more capital to do something, and then going, I really want to put more. I'm just sitting here till I can get out isn't a fantastic answer. So, but it was just, and we were in the middle of the BNZ transaction, so my head's going, we need to finish this.
That was going on at the same time.
We need to finish this. So, and then we need to think about what happens next, right? And Daiichi approached us.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so it's kind of like a storybook outcome. So, I couldn't have asked for a better outcome.
Wonderful. Hey, just in terms of this podcast is designed to actually help people who are on the journey themselves in terms of building their own sort of private business. Have you got any tips that you could share with them? So we usually ask for 1 or 2, 3 tips that you can just share around, what you can do if you're, I suppose there's a number of things. If you're, growing quite quickly, if you're looking to get more capital into the business, or just from a personal point of view, what you'd share.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, small business owners, how do I grow my business, etc. But they don't want to borrow any money, and they don't want to have other investors come in and own some of the business. And they don't want to pay someone, to support them. And even in our industry, advisors who won't pay for an EA. So they do all their admin themselves. They're salespeople, people who are terrible at admin. So it's the worst possible outcome. They are costing themselves far more in doing that than they ever would by paying someone a salary, but they can't see it. So there's no business sense. I also get people who talk about they love the business that they're in, they're passionate about their people, and they make no money. But you haven't got a business then.
No.
And I love what I do because of what we do for people, but I'm ruthless about we have to make profit.
Sustainability. You've got to be profitable.
Or you don't have a business. You can't, if you can't make payroll, or you're worried that you can't make payroll, you haven't got a business, right? So understand what a business is. Don't be ashamed to want to make money. And even if you want to do good, right? Make the money, use the money to do good.
That's exactly what I tell
because
people.
the principles of a sustainable business are that it can then carry on doing that in the long term, as opposed to not. So I think that's a really important part. Part of a business is having a business plan and demonstrating that you know what the numbers are going to look like, that you've got reasonableness around what the expectations of what you can achieve are in terms of sales, for example, costs, etc., and then how much money you need to get to the scale that you need. So if you want to go and talk to an investor and raise money, it's effectively like a prospectus. They know what they're investing in, and so many people don't have a business plan. They say things to me like, I don't know where to start. You go, well, you write up what business are you in?
Yes.
Why you and not someone else? Why would someone want your product or your service compared to someone else? So who's your competition, and how are you going to stand out? Are you going to do the same as them, just cheaper, or are you going to do different than them? And how are you going to tell people about you? I've had so many people come and say, I've built this fantastic system. Now, Naomi, help me get it out there. I go, well, you've decided to be a software developer and you don't have a marketing plan. And do you know how much it costs to be just to continue to support software once you've got it out there and people are licensing it, paying for it? You've got an obligation, right? And you've got standards and cybersecurity and all this sort of stuff. So
I used to work at the ice house, and so I had a lot of that sort of stuff where they come in and go, we've got this amazing product, we spent $200,000 building it. And you go, so how much are you spending on marketing? Oh, we haven't got any money for marketing. Then you're not going to have a business, because just because you build it does not mean you'll get customers. And understanding also what the customer actually really wants, and as what you've built might sound like a great idea, but is it actually genuinely meeting their pain points?
Yeah, well, our industry is really hard. People don't want to buy our products. They don't want to talk about death and dying. They don't want to talk about money, and they don't want to pay for anything. But there's a fundamental need for the product. So that if we can get in front of you, we can show you that, right? But it's expensive to get in front of you and show you that. So we assume it's going to be expensive to get in front of you and show you that, and we have to make money, from being able to do that, right? And it's huge amounts of money in our business. So, but it applies big or small. You've got to know how you're going to make money, how much money you expect to make, and then if the plan's not panning out, you're going to change something, not wait, and then wait till you fail and then go, oh, it didn't turn out. Like,
fail fast and pivot if you need to.
Pivot. Yeah, exactly right.
So, so but just repeat. So the first thing is, delegate without a doubt. I'm a big fan of this because at the end of the day, we shouldn't be doing $25 an hour work. Anything that you're not good at or you don't like should be given to somebody else, and elevate yourself up to what you're really, really good at and what your unique ability is. Next thing is make sure you've got a plan. And I think we've actually got a thing called a VTO. It answers 8 questions. What are your core values? What's your core focus? Who's your target market? What are the things that you actually solve for in terms of uniques? What's your 10-year target? And then, how are you actually going to achieve that in terms of a plan? And the third thing, what would be the third thing? So delegate, elevate, get yourself a plan. What would be the third thing you would suggest?
Be passionate. Or actually, let me change those words. Get passionate.
Right.
So there's an awful lot of people who think passion and happiness happen to you. They don't happen to you. You decide them. Because passion for something gets you up in the morning. It keeps you up at night when that's what's needed.
Yes.
It gives you the reason to get out of bed in the morning because, the thing you're going to is something you really want to go to. Right? And it might be hard. I'm not saying it's always easy, but it's still something you're passionate about solving or getting over, etc. And if you really can't get passionate about it, then you don't do it. Just don't do it. So like I said, for me, I learned that very early on. I'm passionate about the purpose of the industry. Yeah, absolutely, and learned that very, very early on. And that's never changed. It's always been a key driver for me of why I do what I do. And I see lots of people who just do a job. And all they're interested in is themselves and how they look in that job until the next job. And they destroy companies. And in the end, they end up being, often they end up at a place where they're questioning what their point in life ever was. And that seems really sad to me. I think you want to be content that you were who you wanted to be. And passionate about something. is one of those things.
I always say you need to do what you love with people you love. And I think people sort of think that maybe passion means they have to take their hobby and turn it into a thing, which is not true. I mean, Steve plays music, but that's not his actual job. He loves his numbers. That's what he actually really gets passionate about in his business. And the same thing with running a business. I think you've got to be passionate about what you do, but it doesn't have to be your hobby.
No. Or your only love.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but hopefully you've got lots of them.
That's
Trying
right.
to pursue other things as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so delegate, make sure you've got a plan, and choose to be passionate. I mean, that's the thing. I think you're absolutely right. It is a choice.
Yeah.
And if you really can't choose to be passionate, then give it up and go and do something else because life is too short.
How do you sell what you do to customers
if you're not passionate?
If you're not passionate.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I get it. Oh, that is so wonderful. Hey, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Lovely to kind of spend some real time with you. I've been fortunate to see you at various staff functions and things, but nice to actually have a really good chat about business. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Debra.